Let me begin by saying good morning to each and every one of you. It is indeed a pleasure to be here today. And just to kind of, I believe in laughter, it's good for the soul. For those who do not know, Dr. Freeman used to be my babysitter, so that kind of tells you how old he is.
That explains so much. Don't worry about it. Go ahead and edit it out.
We're going to begin with the data teams process, which is a process that's dear to my heart. And the reason for that is when I first started this track with the school improvement specialist position, it was a little chaotic. Didn't know my way. First year race to the top, a lot of things going on. We were building the plane and flying it at the same time. And the data teams process gave me some stability. Every day I walked in, I knew where the school was with the process. And it is just not, and I have to reiterate this to you all, the instructional leaders of the building, as well as to the teachers, it's not a meeting only. It's not a meeting where we take CUA scores. It is a process that should be implemented each and every day because it goes hand in hand with your coaching cycle as well as with your school improvement plan, which drives your building, okay? Step one, collecting and charting the data. We know data is so important and we have to use it if we have it. There's various types of data. You know, we have cause and effect data and we need to look at it. So data is very, very important. And it starts with us, the school leadership team, then it goes down to the teachers pulling data and even the kids because the students have to take ownership in their own data as well. And I think it's important. Often we keep the data instead of giving it to them. It belongs to them and they need to take ownership. After we look at the data, we want to analyze to prioritize. And that was one of the key things that upon taking the job, I wanted to pull the data because in looking at the data, it would help me to analyze and prioritize my work. And we want our work to be purposeful. And that was one of the key things as I pulled the data, looking at it and making sure that whatever we did was effective. The next step, SMART goals. And we all know SMART acronym, specific, measurable, attainable, relative, and timely. Goals are very important, be it short goals or be it long-term goals. We know that they're very important. We have SMART goals that guide our school improvement plan. We have SMART goals where teachers should have that guide their instruction. And of course, the kids need to have SMART goals and so that they can take ownership and they can see where they're, the direction in which they should take. After the SMART goals, the instructional strategies. Within these data teams processes, within the data teams process and in the meetings, we're actually looking at, okay, we have this goal. What instructional strategies are going to be effective in order for us to achieve this goal? So we list the goals and we want to choose the instructional strategies that have the highest effect size. Determining result indicators, that's the behaviors. What will it look like? What will the students' behavior be? What will the teacher's behavior be? And we're talking about this during this time. And also the evidence and artifacts. This is now where strong and weak work look like. We address the strong and weak work. That was one of the key things with Eddie, I think, the growth came from. Teachers actually got a chance to actually come into those data team meetings. And we talked about strong work from weak work. What's the difference? We have a picture in our mind. And I often say, we have a picture, the teachers have a picture, even the students have a picture. But it's not until we paint the same picture that we're able to be on the same accord. And then, of course, last, if we inspect what we expect, we have to monitor and be consistent in our monitoring and our evaluation of the process. And it starts all back over again. Once we get in those other formative assessment scores, it's a process. And if we embrace it, we will get our children ready, college and career ready, and we'll move forward. This is my favorite quote by Jim Collins. For those who embrace truth, we must, in order to make changes, we have to first embrace the brutal facts. And that's where that data comes into play. So sit back. We're going to look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. But it's okay. As long as we embrace it, from there we can move forward to impact our work. If you'll look at your sheet, what I did was your data sheet. In pulling the data, I wanted to make sure, we were targeting the key things of the district that we needed to target. Because it's one thing to have data, but it's another thing to look at data that's irrelevant. So I wanted to make sure I was pulling the right data. Of course, I pulled your CCRPI scores as well as some other data. And here are my findings.
And math remediation courses. 68%. So now put that in perspective of the actual percent of students we send to college. 68% nationally of those students going to college have to take remedial college courses, which don't count towards a degree, that parents have to pay for. So that's that K-16 continuum and the gap between 12 and 13. Okay, so that's why we've got to work on our Lexile scores as indicators to show us our students are ready to go to college and enter college without remediation courses.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's okay.
Yes, sir.
What's the level in 8th grade that they have to be considered?
Proficient, 1075.
And we've got some gaps there too.
Yeah, very big.
Went over that.
Theirs was like 56.5% exceeded. They were either at or equal to 1075.
That's the low end.
And that's the low end. Again, that's the low end. Mm-hmm.
So you're asking to jump 200 points in 1 year?
I didn't hear you.
You're asking to jump 200 points in 1 year?
In Lexile,
Right.
it's doable. It's
You're
doable.
looking at, and mainly it's, they look at it the 11th grade, they're not looking at the 9th grade.
No, CCRPI based on 11th grade.
Yes, based off 11th, but we have a range for 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th.
What's the range for 8th grade?
The range for 8th grade starts at 935 and goes from 935 to
So for them to be
it's 1075,
75.
1085 if I'm correct, for 8th grade.
You go back one. 8th grade was on the top.
Yeah.
The upper end, I'm sorry, 1160.
So it's 1050 for the 8th grade. Now,
At the lower end of the stretch
At the
band.
lower end.
So you have the normal Lexile range for the kids that are at bare minimum, and then you have a stretch text band, and that stretch text band is a low and high, and those are the kids who are on target in reference to being college and career ready to read complex text.
And the reason I'm asking is, I mean, obviously we have a lot of growth that we need to do in high school level, and I would never say we don't.
And you're growing.
But it seems a lot of times that we're expected to grow on almost exponentially from where we get there.
I understand.
And I'm not saying that we don't bear some of that burden, because we do. I mean, we're their last shot. We gotta get them there.
Right.
But I just want, we gotta get them at a level to start.
To be,
before we get them there.
and that's the beauty of further on in the presentation, you're going to see if we begin to execute specific instructional strategies, by the time they get to you, they will be ready to move, and we can move them to where they need to be to that higher end of that stretch text level for high school. So, and you're right, Mr. White, it starts at the bottom, and then from elementary to middle to high.
and I'm going to go back. I think I want to make sure you got the correct percentages. I think it was right around 65% of the kids on the CCRPI score, the 8th grade students met the required score for CCRPI. Lexile score.
The 1075
Lexile
Lexile.
score. It's 950. It's 950. Now, the question is, what are they doing at the high school level with reading complex text? That's the question. In your courses, what are the teachers doing to ensure that they're reading complex text and getting in depth into the complex text?
And that's
because
what's going to be on the next slide.
It's going to go.
Yeah, it's 1050 for middle school, 1050, and then it's for high school. All right. So when looking at your Lexiles and the deficiencies, of course, we had to have a vision. That's the analyze to prioritize. What would our targets be? So when looking at literacy, 3 targets. The first target, every content in the building should be utilizing the literacy practices, the literacy instructional strategies. So what will it look like? I know many of you are asking, what will this look like? You'll have direct vocabulary instruction, a lot of sustained writing, daily writing, and we're going to pull in a lot of informational text. Okay? And of course, we want the text that we use to be on the appropriate Lexile. Not the, where the kids are, but we've got to bring them up, and that's the purpose of complex text. So they may be at a lower level, but we know students do not rise to low expectations, so we want to put them at the level, even if it's that low stretch band of the Lexile, we want to use text that's within those, that Lexile framework. Second target, understand the Common Core shifts. When looking at the Common Core shifts, we're looking at content-rich environments that's utilizing informational text. And within that, we have teachers that require the students to speak, to read, and to write with evidence, where they have extracted that evidence from the text to support their arguments, to support their positions. And last, practice with complex text. When we practice, we get better. Okay? Third, once we practice and model, that takes us to target 3. Then they're able to actually do it individually, where they read, comprehend, and then from there they're able to write from what they have comprehended. So now, why a vocabulary instruction? Vocabulary instruction is at the bottom. It's at the bottom. It's the foundation. And we know that a house that is built upon a weak foundation will not stand. The more and more weight you put on it, it's going to crack. And that's what we see with the Lexiles. That's what's happening. Lexiles, according to Doug Fisher, Lexiles is vocabulary. And we have to build their vocabulary. So how are we going to do it? Through vocabulary instruction. So let's look at the why behind the vocabulary instruction before we move on. Kids that are coming from a print-rich environment, they bring to the table, background knowledge-wise, 20,000 to 25,000 words. But kids that are coming from a background where it's limited, there's no text in the house, people are not talking with them and conversating with them, they only bring 5,000. Well, in 1 year, we see in the early years, 3,000 words should be acquired, or they should have it. Then from there, it moves up to 4,000 to 5,000 as they matriculate. Well, when looking at direct instruction, we can only teach them 400 to 500 words in direct instruction, which leaves 4,500. So what are they going to do? They're going to have to read outside of the classrooms. But if they hate to read, their reading levels are low, we're not going to see the 4,500 words that they need in addition to be obtained. So how do we handle that? We see vocabulary is the single greatest contributor to reading comprehension, which we know is a primary factor to achievement, according to Doug Fisher and Marzano and Isabella Beck. So why do we need vocabulary instruction? When looking at vocabulary, we see that for a child to just comprehend main idea, which is low level, in Bloom's taxonomy, it's level 1 and 2, the child needs to know 90 to 95% of the words in the text. So vocabulary is key. Vocabulary helps to build background knowledge. And as we know, some of our kids are coming to us and they're limited in their background knowledge. Here's the impact of direct vocabulary instruction if done with fidelity. That's the key word. Compliance is one thing, and you can take a great strategy, but if you take a great strategy and give it to a person that's not going to implement it fully, you're not going to get the effect size. Okay? So keep that in mind. But Stahl and Fairbanks, that was the initial study that was done. From this study, other studies came about, and a meta-analysis was done. But when looking at all the studies, all of the studies yielded similar effect sizes in reference to direct vocabulary instruction. If a child was or students were not provided vocabulary instruction at all, we see they fall in the 50% range. Direct vocabulary instruction, that's just simply where we're integrating the vocabulary, writing from the dictionaries, and just talking briefly about it. The effect size was 0.32. But for vocabulary instruction, where words were used related to the content, and we talked about it and we allowed the kids to express themselves and make connections, the effect size was 0.97. Now, we know 0.5 is 1 year growth according to John Hattie when looking at the effect size. 0.5. Here, we had an effect size of 0.97. So this is why vocabulary instruction is so important. 6 steps to building Marzano's, 6 steps for building vocabulary, and it comes from Marzano, and that's what your teachers are actually implementing within their IoT classes. This is why it is so important in IoT that your teachers follow the process. It's not about looking up the words, it's about the process that they're taking the kids through, because that's going to be the same process that the students will use when they're not in the presence of their instructors, okay? First step, to provide an explanation of the definitions. Well, an explanation is just not giving them the definition. It's allowing them, you may present pictures, you may present videos, images, and then from there you allow the kids to kind of formulate in their mind what the definition might be. They're making connections now to their background knowledge. And we know, and I often say it's like that Velcro. Kids come to us with Velcro, and it's our job to launch out things, and it attaches to their Velcro. This is what the direct vocabulary instruction does, okay? Step 2, they formulate their own definition. They're really digesting it, and then they're putting it in their own words. Step 3, they're going to represent the definition through linguistic and non-linguistic representation. So they're interacting, we're exposing them more and more to the words, different activities, which then leads us to step 5, they're talking about it. How that word is used in text, how those words may be used not only in this content area, but in that content area. They're making the connections. And then, of course, we're playing games. Everybody likes games. That's the engagement component and piece of it. Vocabulary tiers. Here's another reason why IoT is so important, because the words that your teacher have are academic vocabulary, and they're within those tiers. Tier 2 to be exact. Tier 1 is the tier we call basic survival words. Those are the words our kids come to us with. Tier 2 will be what we call I like to call them the to-do, the high frequency, the requests. Those are the words like explain, demonstrate. Okay, those are the words that the kids see often on assessments similar to the Georgia milestones. And then tier 3 are the what we call the specialized terminology. Heidi Jacobs, another literacy guru, she calls specialized terminology, and those are our content words. Doug Fisher stated, we teach too many tier 1 words, not enough tier 2, and we're just right with tier 3. So I'll teach you the content, and you have it, but when you get on an assessment, you don't know what to do with it. Tier 2. That's why it's so important that we make sure we execute IoT with fidelity, because that's where our students are getting that basic knowledge that they need to know what to do on the Georgia Milestones exam that they'll take in the spring. There are 5 access points to comprehending text. First one, purpose and modeling. We have to give a purpose, and the teachers model. The second access point is close and scaffold reading instruction. That's where the kids are doing the annotation. They're talking about the text, but we're not looking at a big piece of text. We're taking small chunks of the text, but we're going deeper. And in going deeper, that gets in, of course, you all know Webb's depth of knowledge, as well as going higher on Bloom's taxonomy with the application, analysis, and synthesis. The next one, of course, is collaborative conversation. We know that kids pick up 30% more when they're doing the talking, and they're collaborating and talking. Here, we should see literacy circles. Reciprocal teaching, which yields a very high effect size, 0.7 if I'm correct. Independent reading. That's where now they're going to be alone, but they know what to do. They know where to focus. The vocabulary, going deeper into the text and looking at those text-dependent questions. And then we have now, I've read it, I understand it, now I've got to demonstrate. That's where the sustained piece of writing will come from. So we have multiplicity of text, which guides us into the sustained writing. So how do we address our targets? We're going to use two vehicles to address our targets. IoT, which I just spoke about, and CISM. CISM is just simply good instructional strategies put in a sequential manner, and they're good literacy strategies, which I call, and most literacy consultants call the Big Six literacy strategies, put in a consistent manner so that the kids can not only know vocabulary, but they can understand how to go deeper in the text and connect with the text. So here are some of the benefits. The peer collaboration, of course, is always great. Thinking about their thinking, the metacognition. Note-taking, they're going to learn how to note-take. In CISM, we call it text coding, where they're going in and they're categorizing. They're making with a predictive question. They're predicting. These are all Big Six literacy strategies. Multiple student products. Here we get into the engagement piece now. After I understand the text, now it's time for me to demonstrate my understanding, and I can do it through multiple means of representation, multiple means of action and expression, and then of course that's going to lead me into the multiple means of engagement, where then I begin to self-reflect, I begin to self-evaluate, and ultimately that's what we want to do. It's called universal design for learning. Okay? Demonstration of our understanding, student engagement, and then of course, Mr. Richburg, increase in exiles. We should see those exiles increase. Okay? So what's in it for you? Everybody needs incentives. What's in it for you guys? For your teachers? Increase in academic growth. We're going to see the increase in the academic growth, student achievement. And when student achievement grows, those CCRPI scores grow. From there, deep connection with the text. We have a lot of students, according to international, in some of the magazines with business, we found out that many of our kids cannot take jobs because they lack the skills needed to read informational text. So in a literacy-rich environment that is Common Core, we should see more vocabulary, but we should see those instructional manuals and things like that that they will be exposed to once they get out of the four corners we know in our school buildings. Okay? Increase in exiles, and then of course, CISM addresses the T's. When you walk in a room, you will see the planning, you'll see the strategies, the differentiation, the various types of assessments, but most of all, and I don't know about you guys, but I know Dr. Freeman fussed about it, the academically challenging environment. It's going to produce that for you. He stayed on that, us about that, seeing that. So everybody needs a plan. So here's our action plan. Because prior planning prevents poor performance. We rolled out the professional learning session on Marzano. We spent time, our district coaches actually constructed the lessons. So that rollout is now completed. Implement direct instruction during increased learning time. You all are doing that now. Hopefully, you're monitoring it, and we're doing it with fidelity because we want that, that effect size. Attend CISM trainings. Your teachers, if they have not attended, they should be attending. I think our last CISM training should end in October.
October
October
Makeup day.
is the makeup day. And we will be providing you tips and tools and techniques on how we can enhance your instructional planning. Let me stop here and say, it's all in the planning. We've got to plan to be successful. This is not something that where you can pull from the internet. You have to sit down, you have to look at text, and you have to know which parts you're going to teach and go deeper into. It's not about teaching the entire text. It's about little, in this situation, is the best. In reference to pieces of text to where you can go deeper and look at the, and talk about the thinking. And the kids are doing the discussion. And then, of course, after the rollout in October, teachers will be asked the second quarter, beginning the second quarter, to produce one CISM lesson a quarter for each content area except for math. At the end, we will compile those lessons to put them in a bank so that the next year teachers will have a plethora of CISM lessons that they can refer to and pull out when needed. Evidence of effectiveness. Coming from a race to the top school. If you do not have evidence and artifacts, we know your work doesn't exist. And we were always told, Mr. White, quantify and codify. Okay?
Well, I asked her to define pedophiles, she couldn't define it. That's right.
It's coding. Actually, coding is putting kids in different coding. Courses. CISM plans, that's going to be one way for your evidence of effectiveness. Pull some of the plans, look at it. Analysis of student work, that's going to be key. Those are the discussions that should be occurring in your data teams, not just CUA talk. And CUAs are great, don't get me wrong, but it is about the work that the teachers are doing. That's the discussion in those PLCs that those teachers should be having. What is strong work? What does it look like? It's like Baskin-Robbins. Ice cream, but 37 different flavors. You've got to go in and paint the picture. What's weak work? What characteristics make up weak work? And how do we move those kids who have weak work from weak to middle of the road to strong? If we're not having those conversations, we need to begin to have those conversations because that's what's going to move our schools and it's going to help to build strong educators. It's our craft, it's what we do, and we want to get better at it. It's for the children. Classroom observations as you go in, just kind of looking to see what's the Lexile levels. There are 3 measures that you can look at when you're trying to determine complex text. A lot of times we only look at the quantitative measure, which of course is the density. And Dr. Lewis, I like to say it, almost. He said the grade level times 100 plus 3. That deals with the density. That's the quantitative form. But what about the qualitative form? The qualitative form deals with the structure of the text, how it's organized, purpose and meaning. It deals with background and goes deeper even into the dialect, okay? And then the last measure is matching text to reader and reader to the task. That's that sustained writing, okay? Collected data, the common unit assessments. But we know our common unit assessments still level 1 and 2 of Bloom's taxonomy. The Georgia milestones will be that level 3, 4, and 5. And we have to move beyond that. That was one of the things I expressed with the teachers in dialoguing with them. It's not about the CUA, but if we teach and we teach effective strategies in reference to complex text, we won't have problems on the Georgia milestones, and that CUA will be a breeze because all it is specialized. I mean, it is in looking at data and looking at assessments. Of course, it's selected response, okay? And then last, standardized test scores, our scores will go up. But you know, it's not about the scores. Well, in some cases, it's small. For me, it's about preparing students to be and do whatever they want to do. And they're depending on us. For some of them, we're all that they have. And we have to do the best that we can do and go sometimes 110% beyond. Dr. James used to always say, where we were, we had to not only do it 100%, but we had to do it 150% because some kids need more. And they don't start off at the same point. And we know this. But that's what we're here for. We're the great equalizers, as I would like to say.
Highlight the standardized test score. It's not just the milestones, even though that's what we're graded on. But it's about the ACT, it's about the SAT. Those are the ones that get those folks into colleges and universities. Nationally, AP, that's what it's all about, folks. So it's getting kids ready to take those assessments, and if they can get ready to take those assessments, then the milestones are going to be a breeze.
Yep.
And the bottom line is, those are evidence-based assessments that actually tell the preparedness and a predictor of future success
Yes.
for a student. So when we talk about assessments and there's too many, sure there are. Is there a right number? I don't know. I mean, to me, the best assessment is a formative, because that gauges my teaching. However, the summative is the one that is our own report card. The hardest test any of us will take is a self-assessment. And a summative is actually our self-assessment. What level of preparedness have we given to that particular student? Because their future level of success is directly correlated with that score. And so people can say yay or nay on tests and the frustrations, and they're all true. But the bottom line is that is our assessment as a district, as a school, as a teacher. If only 60% of my class have exceeded on an EOC, whose grade is that actually? And if that really belongs to the teacher? And then who's their instructional leader? I mean, we all own it. And then who's your level of support as an instructional leader? It's us. So it's all of us in here assuring that every single solitary 33,000 of our children are prepared for their future. And that's a big burden, but it's also such a privilege to know that you're helping children
Yes.
and for the rest of their life, and that you can be a blessing to them. And that's where you take a deep breath and say, okay, I'm looking at a plan. Where's my vision? Where is it that I want these children to be? And what action steps do I have to take to get them there?
Saria, before you move on,
Yes.
go back a couple slides if you will.
Okay.
One more. Please reconnect for the principals how this models CISM, please.
Purpose and modeling. At the beginning of CISM, you'll have a predictive question and then an essential question. And the teacher will actually model reading for them. That's the fluency piece, as well as how to actually look at key things. She's in the CISM lesson, the vocabulary is also pinpointed, and you talk about it. The kids are doing the discussions. So what it is you're previewing the vocabulary first before you get into it, okay? Close and scaffold reading instruction and the collaborative conversations in CISM, that's going to be the part where they text code. They're going in and picking out the significant facts that the teacher wants them to pick out. And through it all, they're conversating with one another. It may be a think, pair, share. It may be a small group. And then we bring it back. It's like individual, where I look at it, pair to group, and then large group, and then you work from the outside back in. Independent reading, they go back into the text because they have to take the essential question now, revise their answer based off of evidence that they actually found in the text to answer that essential question. And then from there, the sustained writing assignment could be a raft, it could be a blog, whatever the teacher decides, or multiple activities. If we wanted to integrate the differentiation there, the multiple activities to actually, for them to demonstrate their knowledge of the text.
Does that help a little? That's why CISM is being implemented, because it meets all of the steps for accessing comprehension.
The categorizing, the recognizing, the inferring, the paraphrasing, the summarizing. Yes.
All of it.
And the key part part about this is it's structured. It's a structured
Step.
process.
5 steps.
1, 2, 3, 4, it's structured. So if they're not doing the structure, then it's not being done. You can't improvise it. You have to structurally do it 1, 2, 3, 4.
And that's not any different than Marzano's 6
Right.
steps either.
Right.
When they're teaching that direct vocabulary.
It has
instruction,
to
they
be
need
in that
going through
process.
all 6 steps, not skipping
Not
things
skipping
here and there.
anything.
Because you want mastery learning of those vocabulary terms, so then when they're taught, they can be applied.
I always end, it takes all of us, one team, working together, one dream, which is academic success for all kids, helping all kids to succeed. So with that, I leave you with the statement, I leave everyone else, good, better, best. We're not going to let it rest until our good gets better and our better becomes best. You all have a blessed day.